Tick tock, tick tock. It's time to drink some whiskey. Toki whiskey from Suntory. Welcome to Dram Fine Whiskey. My name is Matt, and today we're looking at Suntory's Toki whiskey. Now, Toki is actually Japanese for time, so I'm going to give this whiskey a little bit of time in the glass. But while it opens up, if you're new here, scroll down, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button. I put out a new whiskey review every Wednesday and a new cocktail recipe every Friday. So if you subscribe, you'll see them all. Like I said, Toki means time in Japanese, so we're going to give this a couple of minutes to open up, and while it does, I'll tell you a bit of the history of this whiskey. Now, Toki whiskey could be considered to be a sister or a cousin of Suntory's Hibiki Harmony blend. The Hibiki Harmony blend is their kind of premier line of whiskey. It looks much nicer, a very well put together bottle, and it also comes from the same distilleries. So this comes from the Yamazaki, the Hakushu, and the Chita distillery, the same distilleries as make the whiskies that go into the Hibiki Harmony blend, but I think the majority of the whiskey in this blend is coming from the Chita distillery. This means you can probably expect those similar kind of apple, orchard fruits, bit of peppery, spicy notes. You expect those similar kind of notes, but just maybe on a different kind of level. You expect maybe a bit more smoke or a bit less smoke. It's not their premier line, so I'm not expecting it to be as nice as the Hibiki Harmony, but I'm expecting it to be a pretty good whiskey. One thing I do like about this whiskey is that it is safe under the new Japanese rules. Now, if you've not been living under a rock, you should know about the new rules on Japanese whiskey. Basically, they boil down to the rules saying that if you want to call something Japanese whiskey, it has to be brewed, fermented, mashed, distilled, and matured in Japan. So they're no longer able to source whiskey from abroad and call that Japanese whiskey. But this Suntory Toki is safe under the new rules, which means it has nothing foreign in it. It is just a Japanese whiskey. It's also clocking in at that typical Japanese whiskey alcohol percentage of 43%. It's not going to be mind-blowing, it's not going to be overly flavorful, it's not going to have any cask strength notes coming through from it, but at the same time it's not going to be right at the floor, so it's not going to be overly bland. So I think I've given this Toki whiskey enough time, so let's get into the nose. Okay, there's definitely like orchard fruits coming through here, a little bit of pepper maybe as well. Like it's not just plain apples, plain pears. There's definitely a bit of spice coming through here. Like there's a bit of pepperiness, maybe not cinnamon, maybe a bit of ginger. That kind of heat but not spice. You know, that definitely like that bit of heat coming through from there. There's definitely nice notes coming through, kind of fresh, very light, very vibrant nose on this whiskey. There's not a lot of smoke, like you get a little hint of smoke, but it's nowhere near what you'd call like a peated whiskey. It's nowhere near like the Hakushu whiskies that you get that are definitely more smoky, that definitely have that peat influence. This is more akin to something where there's a little bit of peated whiskey in the blend, and that's coming through, but it's just more of a noticeable kind of note, or an interesting note, as opposed to something that's dominant. So let's go in again and see if we can find any more notes in the nose. Again, just more of that kind of zingy upfront, that sweetness, a bit of honey sweetness maybe. Yeah, I think it's honeyed kind of sweetness. It's a bit thick, but it's quite bright and summery and fresh. It's a nice little nose in this whiskey. It's promising a lot. Let's see if it'll deliver on the palate. Okay. The smoke from the nose, it's much more apparent in the palate than it was in the nose. Now again, it's not a dominant note at all. It's definitely noticeable. It's more noticeable in the palate. But those orchard fruits, and maybe moves more into like a green apple kind of freshness. Again, a bit of spice, but it's more coming in through like an oak spikes, like kind of like a charred oak kind of spiciness that comes through. It's nice, and like most Japanese whiskies, it fades away. It's pretty much gone already, so I'm going to go back in and see if I can find anything else. Okay, second go around, a bit of vanilla became much more apparent. Again, it's got that vibrant, bright, sweet note coming through. It's not really honeyed, it's more like a candied sweetness, and just like vanilla. It's very light, it's very easy and refreshing, easy to approach. There's not a lot to unpack there, so I'm going to go in again, but we'll see if we can find anything particular about the finish. Okay, on the finish, like I said, it does fall away. the note that kind of hangs around the most is the pepperiness, that little bit of spice, that kind of little bit of peppery, maybe ginger, maybe that kind of heat in there. It's a little bit tingly. It's not at all that you'd expect from like an overly sherried whiskey with a lot of spice, a lot of kind of baking spices, dried fruit spice coming through. It's much more akin to just something light and refreshing. There's not a lot to unpack in the finish. I mean, there's a little bit of lingering smoke as well, but again, it's very mild, it's very light. It's not something really that you'd particularly pick out unless you were looking for it. If I were to sum up this whiskey, I'd say it's smooth and refreshing and bright, but a little thin. Like, it hits a lot of surface level notes, but there's not a lot of depth beneath those notes. It's very nice, it's very easy to drink. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with this whiskey. It's a little thin, yes, but there's nothing that makes me go, oh, that's not nice, I don't want any more of that. It's nice, it's easy to go back to. I mean, Toki means time, so maybe it's easy to just spend a bit of time with this whiskey, drink a couple of glasses of it. You're not wasting your time, you're not focusing on what to unpack in the nose, what to unpack in the palate, you're just drinking it. So they actually, I think, recommend using this in a highball, and I could definitely see that working. I mean, it's got those bright, spicy, refreshing notes, so it would probably work really well in a highball, topped with soda, topped with ginger ale, where you get those bright, shiny notes coming through, and you're not really hiding any of the depth, because the whiskey doesn't have any real depth. This is something of a hard whiskey to recommend. I mean, yes, it's nice, and yes, it's enjoyable, and yes, I like it, but at the prices I've seen it for, I'm not sure I'd recommend it. I mean, I've seen this whiskey in Ireland for €57.50, and I've seen it as low as €39. So it's very hard. Like that's a huge price difference for something that is quite thin. It's quite nice and smooth, yeah, but it's a bit thin. Like, there are better whiskies in that category. At €57, you're almost into like Redbreast, Green Spot, you're into like Dingle single malt territory with that price. So I'm not sure I'd recommend it at that high price. I found this for €35 on sale. So I mean, at that price, I definitely recommend it. I mean, it's a good whiskey at that price. At that price, you're in the same kind of region as kind of the lower end, the more entry-level Scotches or Irish whiskies. So I'd say, depending on what price you can find this at, I'd recommend it. It's definitely a thumbs up. And if you find it at a lower price, you're not going to feel guilty putting it in a highball, putting it in a cocktail. But if you pay 60 or 65 or even higher for this whiskey, you're probably not going to use it as that. And that's what this whiskey is for. I mean, it's for enjoying, it's for mixing in highballs. It's a shame that because it's Japanese whiskey, it's got that extra price added to it. So I think that's where I'm going to leave this review. I mean, if you can find it at a low price, I'd say get it. You'll probably enjoy it. I'm going to keep on enjoying this now, and I will see you next time. Sláinte.